Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is a review and testing of the all-new Carpro Cquartz Lite 2.0. So let's quickly go through what Cquartz Lite 2.0 is, cover some of the basics, and then we'll get straight into the testing and results. 6 years ago, Carpro released the original Cquartz Lite, which I did review, and just to state the obvious, it's a true ceramic coating used to protect and enhance car paint and trims from the elements, pretty much like every high-performing ceramic coating out there. The light aspect just refers to its ideally easier application and affordability or value, which is typically associated with a less concentrated formula. Now, according to the brand, the new Cquartz Lite 2.0 has been completely redeveloped to deliver the easiest and most versatile ceramic coating experience yet. Designed for both enthusiasts and professionals, this new formula ensures smooth, consistent application in a wide range of environments from sun, shade, indoors and outdoors as well. Durability is up to 2 years with proper care, offering excellent resistance to chemicals, environmental fallout and UV damage, while it still maintains the brand's hallmark strength in delivering rich gloss, slickness and impressive hydrophobic performance. Quantity and price-wise, Lite 2.0 will come in a large 100ml glass bottle and will be available both separately or as a kit that includes microfiber applicators, cloth, stickers, and instructions. At the time of this video, it was priced at about 55 to 60 USD or about 85 AUD here locally. So I guess where Carpro is distinguishing this new formula from the old is with increased durability, though I have to say that the old formula's stated 6-month plus durability claim was way underrated, as I found it was more like a 12-month plus coating at least based on my testing and real-world results. And secondly is the application, which is being pushed as far easier, forgiving and more versatile, which I think for a light coating should always be at the top of the list. But I guess we'll see. I devised a number of tests for this video assessing and comparing Cquartz Lite 2.0 in a number of areas such as the ease of application, its looks, slickness, hydrophobicity, and potential durability. This video was a lot of work to put together, so I do hope you find it helpful, and let's get to it. Let's start with testing the user experience. As with most of my product reviews, I'll try to explain and show the results in the footage, also adding text on screen where applicable. But I want to be clear that my findings and conclusions will also be based on more off-camera testing and assessing I did prior to the video. Also, no amount of testing is ever 100% conclusive, so just consider this information as one set of hopefully valuable information. I was keen to test Lite 2.0's claimed flexibility. So on this first test panel, I applied the coating with 4 different wipe-off times, the minimum 5-minute recommendation by Carpro, a 10-minute test, and the maximum 15 minutes suggested by Carpro as well. I then included a longer 30-minute section to see how it would perform. Now, apart from how easy or difficult the wipe-offs were in each section, which I'll discuss in a minute, I'll also use this panel later on to test if there are any differences or benefits in allowing the coating to sit for longer or shorter periods. When leveling the coating, both the 5 and 10-minute wipe-off times were perhaps the quickest and easiest experiences I've had with any true ceramic coating in the past 12 years. At 15 minutes, the coating did feel a touch more grippy or a little closer to what you'd expect from, let's say, Cquartz UK, but still a little easier. At 30 minutes, it was still surprisingly doable, but there was more grip and streaking that took a touch longer to deal with. So overall, I would say that the quicker wipe-off times were a little easier, but even at the 30-minute mark, at least in my environment, it was still better than many ceramic coatings to level down. Throughout all the testing, I also found that any high spots or missed streaks could be dealt with even hours after application with a simple wipe-off, or at worst by reapplying the coating and wiping it down again. Now, the actual ideal timing will depend on the results, so we'll just have to see how all the sections perform before judging it. I also tested the coating in direct sunlight and let it sit for over 10 minutes in what was about a 20°C day. To my surprise, it was almost just as easy to wipe off as using it indoors. I'd even say that I could have left it for another 5 to 10 minutes without issue. And just to be clear, this is in no way typical of how a true ceramic coating behaves in direct sunlight, and quite out of the ordinary. On this next test panel, I tested layering Lite 2.0 to compare a single layer to 2 layers, and then also compared it layered with Gliss V2 on top, which I think many people may want to do as a base and top layer combination. From a user experience perspective, there was almost no difference in how the second layer or how Gliss behaved when topped over the base layer of Lite 2.0. And again, this is a little uncommon, as typically layering does tend to be a touch more finicky than applying it to the initial layer or the clean bare paint. On this final test panel, I decided to lay down a few different coatings next to Lite 2.0, including Cquartz Lite version 1, as I think it's important to see how it compares to the original. I also added Geon Cancoat Evo, as I think it'll be its main competitor. And lastly, I added Cquartz UK 3.0, as I also believe many people may want to know how they compare, especially since they both have almost the same durability claims. I should also add here that on this test panel, I followed each coating's specific recommended application from the brands themselves, using their own provided applicators, rather than my own preferred methods and techniques, just so there's no debate or improper applications. So to sum up the user experience of Cquartz Lite 2.0, I have to say that although it looks, feels, streaks and rainbows up like most ceramic coatings as you lay it down, that's where the similarities seem to end, as the wipe-off window is crazy long, the environmental forgiveness seems to be on another level, and the ease of wipe-off and leveling just couldn't be easier and more different to the original version. So all in all, at least as far as the user experience goes, it's definitely off to a great start. I always keep my micro suede cloths after using a coating to ensure they stiffen up, and the new Lite 2.0 does in fact harden quite nicely, as all true ceramic coatings should. However, it does take a little longer to get there, as after 24 hours the cloths had only slightly hardened up, while somewhere in between 48 to 72 hours is when the coating seemed to reach its full hardness on the cloths. By comparison, the original Lite V1, Cquartz UK and even Geon Cancoat reached that same hardness within 24 hours. So this does make me question the recommended 45 to 60 minute layering times, as for a slower flashing and hardening coating, I tend to wait longer, perhaps 2 to 3 hours, or it may even lend itself to 24 hours between coats if you miss the same day layering window. But maybe Carpro has tested layering and found that 45 to 60 minutes is ideal, which isn't something I was able to get to. After all the coatings were given enough time to fully cure, the next area of assessment was evaluating the ability of the coatings to amplify the look of car paint. There's really three main areas or characteristics that tend to determine how good a ceramic coating looks. Firstly is saturation, or the darkening effect that adds boldness and richness to the paint. Secondly is the reflective quality or amplified gloss that can also add the illusion of depth and that wet look we all love. And thirdly is its ability to fill in haze and light swirls, or its defect masking capabilities. Now, the reason I spend so much time filming these videos and capturing clear footage is so that you guys can also judge the results for yourselves, so feel free to draw your own conclusions. But we'll have a look at the panels in both indoor and outdoor light, and I'll discuss what I was seeing and observing in person. Starting with the first test panel with 4 different wipe-off times, I think it's quite telling. Now, all 4 sections do in fact look quite good, so it's safe to say that regardless of the 5 to 30 minute wipe-off times, you'll still get a good looking result. However, it's also undeniable that each section going from the least wait time to the most is about 10% better in looks and finish quality. So although it may not be an astronomical difference, there's certainly some visual benefit in allowing the coating to sit for a little longer before leveling it down. The second panel with Lite 2.0 with single and dual layers, as well as with gliss on top, may be a little harder to distinguish on camera, but what I was seeing in person was a good 25% bump in added saturation, gloss, and filling abilities by adding a second layer of Lite 2.0. But I also now wonder if I waited more like 2 to 3 hours, if the improvement would have been even better. But in any case, there does seem to be a nice visual improvement with an additional layer on top. Whereas I'd say the main benefit I could see in the sections with gliss on top was that increased reflective gloss for the most part, and not so much added saturation or filling abilities. So I'd say that if the darkening effect and filling capabilities is what you're after, a second layer of Lite 2.0 is better at achieving that. While if added gloss and depth is what you're after, then there's no denying that gliss is better at that. But ideally, multiple layers of each seems to be the clear winner here, at least in terms of looks. On the third test panel, there's also no denying that we have 4 quite different looking coatings. The original Cquartz Lite immediately stands out for its very dark and saturated finish, which I also think is extremely good at masking light haze, but may not be quite as glossy as some of the other sections. Cancoat's section, on the other hand, seems to lack that same saturation and filling capabilities, though does have quite decent, good and reflective gloss. But when we look at both Lite 2.0 and Cquartz UK 3.0, I think that although they may not be the best in any one area, they're a little more balanced, having all-round good gloss, saturation and masking capabilities, and I also have to say they do look surprisingly similar. In any case, I do think the new Lite 2.0 is a good looking coating, certainly not as saturated as the original version, not quite as glossy as gliss, and you'll need 2 layers to really bring out its better filling capabilities. But overall, a great looking and well-rounded coating from a visual perspective. The next test was slickness, or the reduced friction that the coatings can produce. This is helpful in minimizing wash-induced swirls and not allowing contamination to bond to the surface as strongly. Now, in terms of increased slickness, I didn't really see much of an improvement on the panel with 4 different wipe-off times. Maybe the section with the longer wipe-off times were a fraction slicker, but it just wasn't a substantial enough difference to be conclusive. The same goes with the sections that had 1 layer of Cquartz Lite 2.0 versus 2. There just wasn't a very noticeable difference or benefit in relation to reduced friction. As a whole, I'd also say that although Lite 2.0 certainly does add slickness compared to the bare paint, and was again almost identical to Cquartz U.K. here, they are both average in this area and not what I consider to be overly slick coatings. Gliss V2 on the other hand is just about as slick as any coating out on the market, but to be fair, Gliss really is more of a top coat or hybrid coating and not what I consider to be a true standalone ceramic coating. It's also fair to say that the original Lite V1 is a far slicker coating than 2.0. I'd even say that Cancoat Evo is a little slicker. And lastly, add once again that Lite 2.0 is very close to Cquartz UK in this area, just for reference. So onto some water behavior testing to evaluate the hydrophobicity of Lite 2.0. Now, as I continue to introduce various amounts of water in diverse spray patterns, and we look at all 3 test panels under these conditions, what you will hopefully see is that the new Cquartz Lite 2.0 is a highly hydrophobic coating. It absolutely sheets the water off its surface rapidly and displays extreme water contact angles with very small and nice pearl-like water beads. With that said, there's certainly more hydrophobic coatings out there, especially when looking at more expensive and exclusive professional coatings, Carpro's own Cquartz Finest as an example, and even when we look at Gliss V2, I'd maybe give it a slight edge over Lite 2.0, but these are not massive differences, maybe 10 or 20% at most. So overall, you can expect Lite 2.0 to perform up there with the best in terms of its water behavior. I'd also say the same again on the test panel with the 4 different coatings. Maybe Cancoat and the original Lite V1 do have a slight 10% or so edge here, with Cquartz UK being very similar and almost identical, but it's also close that it's barely a factor. In the end, all the coatings on all the panels here are in fact very hydrophobic in nature, so it's great to see that the new Lite 2.0 can hold its own in this area. The final test was some chemical resistance to help predict Lite 2.0's potential durability. As always, I started by applying the chemical lightly and then getting more and more aggressive with each subsequent application. In hindsight, I probably should have used a stronger chemical or concentration, as it took forever to break down the coatings on all the panels. So I'll do my best to speed this up and get through it as quickly as possible. On this first test panel, all 4 sections performed pretty well regardless of the wipe-off time. But after the 4th chemical hit, that's when the quickest 5-minute section wipe-off did start to degrade. It took another couple of hits to see the 10-minute section degrade, and after that it was about 8 or 9 chemical hits in total, which is when we started to see the 15 and 30-minute wipe-off time sections also begin to degrade, though they were still nowhere near gone by the time I gave up. What this tends to suggest is that even the quicker 5 or 10 minute wipe off times should still get you close to a year's durability with a single layer. But if you do want to go beyond that, there is without a doubt, based on my testing, that allowing the coatings to sit and flash for longer will give you a more chemically and potentially environmentally resistant coating layer that will last longer. Now, how long your wipe off time should precisely be will be different for everyone based on your own application and environment. But the great thing about this new coating is that there's just so much forgiveness in allowing the coating to sit for longer that doesn't penalize you like almost every other true ceramic coating out there. On this second test panel, what you should immediately see is just how great Gliss V2 is at rejecting the chemical and just not allowing it to sit and penetrate. In other words, its hyper slick and hydrophobic qualities are really fantastic at initially rejecting anything that comes in contact with it, which is how a great top coating should really behave. Now, I should also mention that on this panel, I only allowed Lite 2.0 to sit for about 5 minutes before wiping it down, and I think it's very telling because it performed very similar to the shorter wipe-off times on the previous test panel. With that said, it was clear on this panel that a second layer of Lite 2.0 was perhaps 50% more durable than just a single layer, and that a single layer of Lite 2.0 topped with a single layer of Gliss V2 was, give or take, about as durable as 2 layers of Lite 2.0. In any case, I think either combination with proper maintenance certainly has the potential to last the claimed 2-year duration or more. The ultimate combination here in terms of potential durability was clearly 2 layers of Lite 2.0 topped with 2 layers of Gliss, which I'll be honest was extremely difficult to break down, but will also be extremely time consuming to apply to an entire vehicle. But for those of you interested, I hope this information is helpful. On this final test panel, it was once again an epic journey to break down the coatings, but you will hopefully see by the end that the first 2 coatings to break down were both the original Cquartz Lite and CanCoat Evo that had fairly similar chemical resistance, while both the new Lite 2.0 and Cquartz UK 3.0 were again almost equally durable during this testing. I'll once again add here that I did a slightly longer wipe off time with 2.0 on this panel that seemed to pay off greatly. So while you guys continue to have a look at the results on this final panel, I'll wrap up this video with my own personal conclusions and thoughts. Before I get to Lite 2.0, I want to say that having reviewed Geon CanCoat twice now and being a big fan of it, the one thing that lets it down is Geon's own recommended application to just use a cloth with a couple of sprays and quickly buff it on and off, completing an entire car in just 20 minutes. Now, you can use it that way as I did on this panel, but when you use it in such a rushed application, you also diminish its great potential for that increased gloss, saturation, slickness, hydrophobicity, and the durability it's capable of, and instead get a dumbed down version of it. If I had applied can coat on this panel the way it should be applied with more time and care, I know for a fact that it would have been very close to the new Lite 2.0. But the insistence of Geon to try and sell its application like a speedy water-based spray sealant is what lets it down. And let's be honest, it's just not a great idea to have products like this be airborne in closed spaces when it's not necessary. I'm not saying you need to spend 3-4 hours laying it down, but just spend 60 to 90 minutes instead of 20 and use a separate coating applicator on cloths, and you will see just how great of a coating it can truly be. So what are the cons of the new Cquartz Lite 2.0? I think it's fair to say that a little extra slickness to its finish would be welcome, but I guess that's something Gliss V2 can address, and I'm guessing that's going to be a popular choice in combination. Secondly, everyone's a little different, and I'm sure there'll be some who prefer quicker flashing and wipe off time applications with no waiting, just like the original Lite V1 or even can coat. Now in colder environments that can actually be ideal, but in hotter climates, rapidly flashing coatings can be a lot more problematic. Thirdly, although Lite 2.0 does seem to fully cure within a week, I think Carpro states about 5 days typically, it does seem to take an extra day or two to reach its full hardness compared to most other coatings. Apart from those points, you'll have to help me out in the comments as I'm struggling to find anything else that seems like a potential drawback. I'm really glad Carpro didn't take that spray and wipe angle with the new Lite 2.0 and instead focused on creating perhaps the most versatile, easy and forgiving ceramic coating application we've ever seen. And I don't think that's an overstatement, as you can apply this coating in direct sunlight and let it sit for over 10 minutes, which is just crazy. And you can also let it sit for half an hour in the shade and it still wipes off easier than just about any coating out there, and even easier than quite a few car waxes and sealants. You've also got hours, maybe even a full day in some climates to come back and just simply wipe off any high spots you may have missed, and even over the next day or two, can potentially just add a little more product to an applicator and remove any high spots, which is again a level of ease and forgiveness that's just in a league of its own. So I don't think there is a better ceramic coating for beginners, maybe those hesitant to try their first true ceramic coating application, and certainly for mobile detailers in more harsh and open environments. But even for the more seasoned detailers and enthusiasts working indoors, it still seems to be such a great looking, behaving and performing coating. There's a reason why Cquartz UK, even after 10 years, continues to be one of, if not the best selling ceramic coating on the market. In my opinion, it's because it's the best well-rounded coating in existence. It just does everything really well, from its ease of application, its looks, water behavior, protection, and durability, not to mention its affordable price. But I think we may have a new winner now, and that could be a problem for an aging Cquartz UK 3.0. I mean, the new Lite 2.0 seems to look, perform, and last just as well as UK, but is even more forgiving to apply and about half the price when you consider the 100ml bottle. So the question now is, where does UK 3.0 fit into that equation? I think the answer has to be launching a UK 4.0 version that's really overdue. And although I have no idea, I think this new Lite 2.0 formula could very well be the testing ground for a new, tweaked and full-strength version of Cquartz UK, but I guess we'll see. And please Carpro, don't skip V4 and go straight to V5 like Rupes did. I think that superstitious and pandering stuff is weak. As I mentioned at the start of the video, no one set of testing is ever conclusive, so more time and use is needed to draw more substantial conclusions. But at least initially on the surface, the new Cquartz Lite 2.0 seems like something with great potential, and I am excited to see how it will be received in the detailing community. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. There is nothing greater than knowing the Lord. I pray you all put your trust in Him. May God bless each and every one of you. Stay strong, stay faithful, and I'll see you next time.